Greetings, folks. So, angle tonight, so I'll get into position there. Looks like people are just starting to appear. Right on time. Thanks for coming on as always. I'll go through my usual opening remarks. You're watching From the Tomes on Twitch TV, From the Tomes. I'm over at YouTube at Fox and Board Games. Custom content coming. Custom content's already there. More custom content's coming in the next few weeks as we get back to regular gaming. And I've got a couple one-off videos I'm going to make and put up there discussing gaming topics. Kind of just my thoughts on certain gaming topics. Let's see. Drop this down because actually the one link that I wanted to directly reference tonight was in a chat. So let me pull that up. So, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, at least for now, on Twitter. Fox and Board Games. I don't have any plans for a grand departure, but it's definitely a different vibe over there these days. Different vibe on Twitter than there used to be. So, biggest thing, of course, is thanks everybody for tuning in, for watching, for chatting, for participating, or just lurking. Thrilled to have everybody here. And that's why I keep doing it. I'm just bringing up a couple references here that I wanted to use tonight. No, not that one. Not that one. All right, here we are. So, first off, it is Solstice Night, a night important to many, inconsequential to many. So, have a drink. If you have one there, I've only got a tiny bit of mead so I can actually stay awake. But it is, if there's any night to partake, hey, there he is. Thanks, Wolfie. It's actually more of a tired Yule, but that's okay. It's been a long week, couple weeks, been a long day. It just seems like every time I start to do something, something else came up. And that's kind of how life is, though, right? Let's see if this is yes, this was one of the links that I just was accessing because I had a friend send it over. There's been different spins on this, and that's what's really interesting. It's an interest. Yeah, it's the same basic text as what I saw before. So, the topic for tonight: monetization of the RPG hobby / industry. So the first thing I'm going to say is it is absolutely inevitable that this would occur, that these statements that would start to float out would occur when the amount of money that we've seen start to appear in the world of pen and paper RPGs, particularly Dungeons and Dragons. It's almost impossible that this level of monetization would not, or this level of discussion about monetization would not occur. So this whole chat was inspired by Wolfie just sent another one, but that was from today actually, and I had a friend send it over earlier. Neil sent it over earlier. But if I go over to the work share and pop up the original article. No, cancel. that kind of inspired this talk and inspired a lot of the discussion this week. So that's what it really boils down to. And I'm going to talk about spins, and I'm going to talk about why this is such a big deal, at least in my opinion. But yeah, that's kind of the entire crux of the concern. That historically, as soon as things like this start floating around in an industry, it tanks the industry because it overreaches in terms of financial kickbacks. So, this is the first time in the history of the hobby that there's been anything remotely popular or pop culture about Dungeons and Dragons in particular, or RPGs at all. Most of us who've been this long in a long time know that it was at best this really niche hobby, and that somebody working in an RPG, production sector or writing sector usually had to have at least one other job in the process. This idea that you're a professional D&D writer or dungeon master is brand new in the past, let's say 5 years. Maybe things were starting to ramp up a little bit before that, but it definitely has really catapulted into the forefront in the last 5 years. But there was a quote-unquote fireside chat earlier this week in which Williams, CEO of, CEO, I think that would be the Hasbro CEO, yes, President, Wizards of the Coast CEO. She's the Wizards of the Coast CEO, as well as Hasbro's Chris Cox said, D&D has never been more popular, and we have really great fans and engagement, but the brand is really under-monetized. Okay, so what do you mean by that, Miss Williams and Mr. Cox? I'm going to leave that one right there. Dungeon Masters represent the largest share of the paying players, despite only counting 20% of all D&D player base, while casual players who control a single character don't spend enough to play the game. That's the exact words. They don't spend enough to play the game. Oh, absolutely. Very few people are doing this full time. This illusion that there are these full-time game masters who are making $200,000 on this is like largely fictitious, like yeah, there are, but they're so small in number. It's like the number of people who are a professional guitarist and only ever do that and never have to do anything else. They're these very small numbers, and they're out there. So this has been the ongoing issue in RPGs, right? Dungeon Master buys 5 or 6 books, the players all buy 1 book, and that's it. That's the model, though. That's the model. And they specifically say that they're comparing this to video games and monetization of video games and how this should be handled in terms of cash flow and payment. I'm not sure exactly how this is going to shake out. So they did a little damage control today, the article that Wolfie sent and the article that was sent to me earlier, where they're very quick to say, I'll switch over to that. They're very quick to say that open game license isn't going anywhere. We can still write RPG stuff and sell it for Dungeons and Dragons, but now they are considering a licensing fee if you make a certain amount. Now, from a completely freeform artist perspective, again, to me, this is the slippery slope. From a business perspective, if you have a product and other people are using it to make a significant amount of money, I don't think a licensing fee is out of the ordinary. I don't think it's so inordinate to ask for some kind of licensing fee. And it's, we're talking about people who make between $50,000 and $750,000. Okay, if I'm ever making $80,000 writing D&D stuff, I'll give them their I don't know, 2% licensing fee or whatever it is they're going to ask. I will stamp the products with, you know, we're starving artists. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh, I think the numbers are greater than that. The number of people that even play classical piano or classical flute or any of these instruments that we consider having vocation attached to them who can do it full time is 1% worldwide. Worldwide, a little higher in other countries where they actually can pay a musician, but you still are not living. You're not driving around in limos and have a private jet, you know. So 50,000, 750,000, you know, that's palatable. So the real fear when this came out earlier this week was that they were going to pull OGL or make OGL so prohibitive that independent content was going to stop being produced and you had to get everything from, you know, official channels, official D&D channels. And that would have been really catastrophic, in my opinion. I mean, that's like the death knell of the hobby, at least as we know it. So the OGL and third-party content issues have been addressed. Now, mind you, I've been in enough creative industries where there's been a corporate creep that I don't trust anything until it's actually out there. And, you know, this kind of assuaged the concerns among a couple of people of my regular gaming group. Oh, well, it won't really affect us. It'll just be producers. Well, okay, at least this part of it. But what about the words right here that say, go back to that screen. Oh, I guess I closed. Oh, why did that close? Pull that back open. There it is. That absolutely say right here, players aren't paying enough to play the game. What does that mean? You know, what is your solution for this? Is it that you're not going to print books anymore and you have to get everything through online, and when you want to have that new character class that comes out, you have to pay $5 extra? You're already talking about $30 for PDFs. In some cases more. $50 and up. I paid $0. Quite a few players have paid $0. That is part of, well, but do you play Dungeons and Dragons through D&D Beyond and Roll20? Because if you do, to access certain features, you already need to pay. And again, I'm also, let's see. I think so, but again, we go back to these exact words. Players aren't paying enough to play the game. That to me indicates that they do in fact have plans to further monetize this in a structure that will charge us extra when we want additional content as a player. Not even, you know, and again, as a person who right now is looking at publishing their own game and starting to look at GMing professionally, I'm perfectly fine with having to pay for a certain subscription level to run a game and make money off of it. I fully believe that is absolutely fine because it is their product. It is their environment. It is their platform. I don't have that issue. Again, what I see as dangerous is this. There's CC. How are you? Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Again, good solstice, good Yule to everybody. We've got my fire going in the background. My outdoor fire was a little arthritic with the humidity tonight. Plus, it got really cold and raw. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think we're going to suffer through this tonight. We're going to go in and chat online. Thank you. I can't help but still suspect that there's going to be some sort of mechanism they're going to attempt to put in place to actively charge. So they actually say here, let's see. I believe the D&D player needs to be provided with sources that can unlock the type of recurrent spending you see in digital games. That only means one thing. That only means some kind of model for players. Not even for game masters, for players. They're specifically saying players. Because down here they do sit there and say, okay, the game master spends this much more, but players aren't spending enough. You know, this to me again smacks of that. Now again, mind you, they are making more money off this than anyone in the past 40 years of the hobbies industry. Yeah, well, it will require a submission for sub for sure, absolutely. No worries. Where are you at? You're on. I thought you were on near the West Coast, or are you far flung? Not that it's ain't my business, but I was just curious. For some reason, I thought you were behind us in time. I think that's absolutely true, Blake. I think that's, and again, from a complete like infrastructure perspective, you can't do all that for free forever. I'm keenly aware of that. The language that's being used though definitely has that corporate creep. Oh, you are. Well, hello. I had no idea you were you were smack in the middle of Europe. Do I know you or no? Don't you don't have to you don't have to answer just because there's another game designer I know who actually moved to Central Europe recently. I was like, is that who I think? Is that who I think it is? I don't think it is though. So well, yeah, definitely. Then it's definitely past bedtime there. Most of my German friends are usually logging off right about now. So the recurrent spending environment definitely to me sounds like yes, there will be some sort of subscription for D&D Beyond. You'll have to pay to use D&D Beyond. Now the question is, are they going to be forcing you to use D&D Beyond to get new D&D content? And that's what I'm wondering. You know, are they gonna say that X number of new releases only appear on D&D Beyond? Now, again, we also know that it is quite easy to have that information spread around in the digital age. I mean, whatever they do within minutes, somebody is going to think of a way to share this, you know, with their D&D group. And again, I'm as a person who's looking at publishing a game, I well know that if a group of 4 people are going to buy my game and play it, there's probably only going to be one person who's going to buy the book or even the PDF. Maybe 2 if somebody gets really into it. So, as a person who also can view this from the perspective of a producer, I get it. And for a person who has attempted to live most of their life as a creative and rarely been paid for anything, sometimes even when people use the content or expect the content, whether it be music, photographs, whatever, I do get it. But when CEOs start saying this, okay, well, we're going to get to that because that's something we've had a big discussion about with Blake and Neil and Tom on our private chat group. Yeah, just a text chain, just because to arrange games. Then they do already have digital only. Exactly, they do, but they don't have core rules digital only. They don't have stuff that you need to play the game as digital only. And again, additional digital only stuff I don't have a problem with because let's face it, so many people are playing this in a solely digital environment now, and it makes sense. It makes sense. You know, again, Roll20 and recently I signed up. As some of you wrote me some reviews. Thank you very much. To start playing games. Those are entirely digital platforms, And again, I also understand those things cost money to run. I worked in IT, not for a long time, not deeply, but I did. And I understand that all this costs a tremendous amount of money to run. But this to me seems like a gross misjudgment on the part of what they think motivates RPG player bases. Now, there are generations of people coming in now who are used to paying for bits of things online, that are used to not buying a whole piece of content. And this probably won't bother them. This probably won't bother them much more. Oh, if I need to use this class kit that I can only get on Roll20 and pay only $5 extra instead of a $40 PDF or a $40 book, I'll do it. I think what they're really misjudging, though, is the really long time, hardcore dedicated gamers who are not only jumping on and playing this because all their friends are, who are not only jumping on and playing this for 2 years because they saw it on Stranger Things or whatever, but I feel that. So that's, and no, you're not alone. You're not alone. And the only way that they could gain income from any of that is by making you buy rules and making you buy content in an online environment that has some sort of recurring or tiered cost. But again, what I think we all agreed on was they are setting themselves up. If they do something like that, they're setting themselves up for a real shock in terms of what players want and expect out of this game. And, and I kind of read these comments from these CEOs. And again, in their mind, I think it's gamer backlash is no joke. Look at 4th Ed. I mean, they almost sunk the whole IP because they just hated 4th Ed so much. Everybody just kept playing 3.5 and said, or they went to Pathfinder, And I think that's what they might be misjudging here. I think they might be misjudging exactly to what degree gamers will go to avoid feeling like they're being made to do something to play their game, especially RPGers. I think they are misjudging that grossly because I think they see the numbers. I think they see the logins. I think they see pro GMs making $50,000 a year doing it. Maybe not everybody, but some. I think they see independent producers, quote, getting rich off their product. And again, that's so small of the percentage of the people playing this game. And like I said, the language in this one article distinctly says players are not paying enough to play the game. That is exactly what they're saying. And again, I go back to this from political discussions, especially in the past 6 to 8 years. When someone tells you they're going to do something, even if in your mind you don't really want to believe, or you can't really believe they would do something that anti-ethical or stupid, when they don't now tell you they're going to do it, in so many words, you have to pay attention and ask the question, what exactly, how are you planning to do this? How are you planning to make this money? And it's true. We don't know, right? And they could be floating this to see what the community response is as well. Let's see. All right. This is exactly it. They're dealing with a bunch of people who sit around and in their imagination figure out ways to solve problems, often problems that are sourced in authority, for lack of a better comparison, right? Yeah, and this idea like, well, if we just tell them they all have to pay $5 for the new Paladin kit, they will. I'm like, and again, we don't know they're doing that. I don't know they're doing that. I am just, in my mind, I'm going through the iterations of how you could possibly monetize this for players. like I said, if you want to charge the game master, especially the professional game master who's charging people to run games extra, yo ho ho, yeah. And if you want to do that, okay, right. I mean, you know what? When I started floating out professional level game mastering, I went to a pro subscription on Roll20 after being free, after being like the mid level for a year or two, then going back to basic when I really wasn't running games on it, the free version. So I do get it, but I'm just wondering at what point this is going to do something to them and to the IP and to the whole community that is counterproductive to this surge in gaming. And finally this idea that gaming has become a little bit more mainstream. Now, you know, it's also just well known that corporate America in particular, corporations, but corporate America in particular, simply cannot just make enough money. That they view everything through this lens of we have to make this immediate amount of money right now. And if people get mad and we lose them in 10 years or 5 years or 2 years, oh well, we made their money. You know? And I think that we're seeing a little bit of the this probably won't last forever thought creeping in terms of the CEOs of Hasbro and Wizards. Now, it's been brought to my attention. Yeah. Well, so, you know, here's the thing. I'm not good at buying new editions, right? And I am the perfect example. And it's not even just the money, right? Because I mean, hey, if I want a game book, I'll drop the money on it, even if it's one I'm never going to use, or at least not regularly. I mean, I think this was actually a Christmas gift last year, but the Pathfinder, the Moai Expanse. That is their African setting, African inspired setting, which was written by African scholars. It was written by people who know the culture. It wasn't a bunch of 50-year-old white guys sitting around and writing it like we were joking about the Al Qadim Arabian Adventure supplement the other night in game chat and just how cringy it was then. It's probably way cringier now, but this is an excellent book, and it's really well thought out. The mythologies, the way they integrate the demi-humans, that I think is wonderful. Yeah. So right. So yeah. Right. Well, yeah. So again, but my thing is, okay, if I have a game system that I'm running and enjoying, and I have a group of people who run it and play it and enjoy it, and it works well. I mean, all game systems can be improved upon, even 5th Ed, D&D. I have a lot of trouble spending money to play a game I'm already playing and know the rules of. Where I take the turn on that is, for example, deciding I picked up the 7th edition Call of Cthulhu rules. I use the Quick Start rules, and there are several kits online that are free to take 6th edition rules and convert them to 7th Ed. No, you're right, probably not. So I know a person who moved to the Czech Republic, between Czech Republic and Romania. She's between both, about a year ago. And I would think it was strange if you were her and you didn't even send me a note and say, "Hey, it's me," because I've known this person from game development. She's a teacher. She's teaching there, but she's also a game developer. So I just would have thought it was a little strange if I was like, "Wait, is that you? Have you been on here?" No, but yeah, probably we probably know each other. But it's cool you're on. Thanks for staying up late. It's about 1 a.m. there, or maybe even later, maybe 2 a.m. because it's just past 1 a.m. in Germany, which is where I spend time in Europe. But anyway, yeah, let's see, 1:30. Yeah, that's what I thought. I resisted buying a new rule set for even the game that is one of my favorites, only because I already knew the rules. I already had the rules. There were a few new things. When I started using the quick start guide and when I started using a couple of the supplements that connected 6th and 7th, I was like, all right, these are pretty cool additions. They modernized the game. They made the game more playable in a modern context. It's still hardcore, you know. It's still about death and insanity, but it's not the meat grinder that it was. The player characters are more rounded out. They have basically advantage and disadvantage type rules and tiered successes. All these stuff you find in modern games. And you know what? When they put out the leather bound $100 25th or 30th anniversary edition of the book, I sucked it up. I'm like, you know what? It's this beautiful Necronomicon looking Call of Cthulhu book, limited edition. You know, I was like, all right, I'll suck it up and I'll buy it. When I started running Down Darker Trails, I could have made up everything in the Down Darker Trails supplement and modified the basic Call of Cthulhu rules to the Old West. But I took a look. It was a really nice book, really well written, really well researched, really well illustrated. I was like, all right, I'll spend the $50 on the book, and I got the PDF with it too. So I was like, okay, that's a good deal. The hardcover and the main book and the PDF for $50, and I already had the PDF of 7th Ed Call of Cthulhu that made its way to me at some point. So again, case in point, right? I'm kind of the guy they're talking about here. 5th Ed D&D, I invested in the core book when I had a group to run it with. You know, and that's where I'm at. Like, if I'm gonna, and they're all younger players who don't have the access to the older editions. They don't want to play the older editions. They want to play 5th Ed. Having said that, I have not spent the amount of money that Tom or Blake have, because they are really into D&D as a primary game, and they want the whole experience. So I'm keenly aware that gamers are resistant to buying new books. I am, and again, I'm at the point in my life where it's not a financial imposition to blow $50 on a game book. Probably for the first time ever in my life. Well, right now it is, because I'm on sabbatical. But if I'm teaching my full class load, it really isn't. So again, I get it, and I do get their point. But the language they're using strikes me as probably causing some kind of schism, deterioration in the happy mood of D&D is now popular, and it's the thing we all do, and it's how we have friends, and et cetera, et cetera. And so the comments about the OGL, and which Wolfie sent and which Neil sent earlier, on one hand, right, I'm like, they had to address it, because the rumor was they were going to get rid of OGL, and it was going to be sanctioned content only. It hasn't been like that for 20 years now in D&D, and it would really be a death blow to the hobby, because we all know some of the best content comes from third party creatives who aren't tied to the, you know, necessarily the confines of the environment. They're creating something that they really love. You know, Chaosium is doing this too. People are publishing Chaosium. They cost nothing to license through Chaosium at this point. And yeah, to start this out by saying, all right, well, we're going to start charging people who make this amount of revenue off OGL. Sure, it's not immediately a good look. I agree. I think they had to say something, though. And I think it had to be something besides, we're not going to allow OGL anymore. Because that was the one thing. So we all had that discussion, you know? Like, okay, so my joke is, we should be playing 3.5 or Pathfinder anyway, because they're better games than 5th Ed. Okay, yeah, I'm largely just being sarcastic. I'm needling Blake. I'm needling Tom. I mean, that's part of what I'm doing there. When it comes to Pathfinder, though, honestly, I'm kind of on the fence, but Pathfinder is a different game. It's more like 3.5 on steroids. It's a lot of rules. It's a lot of crunch. It's not, I mean, it's D&D adjacent. But we were all like, you know, if they really throw this completely under the bus, like if they really screw everybody over, there are other games. There are other games I'll play. There are plenty of other games I'll run. I don't even have this great drive to run D&D at this moment. There's other stuff I prefer to run at this time just to my own personal tastes. I'll play D&D, no problem. But there are other games I would rather run as a game master. But yeah, if they had just pulled OGL, I I absolutely cannot imagine what the backlash would be. Like I said, from a completely neutral business perspective, I can kind of shrug and say, okay, if you're going to be making like real money, like a salary off of running someone's product, and they want some kind of licensing agreement, or even that you have to stamp everything with their official seal, that I honestly just don't really have an issue with. I get it. I mean, again, all right, let's speculate that my game takes on, let's say, well, and that's where I'm going with this, and we don't know. So I'm so anti-corporate that as soon as I see stuff like this, I'm like, they've screwed it all up. See, those greedy capitalists have ruined everything again. Um, and I'm realistic enough to know what I've said the entire week is, well, and that's actually it. That's actually it. And that's why I still play Fifth Ed and will still run Fifth Ed if I had a group that really wanted me to, which I do. I just would rather run other things, and I have to run other things like my own game right now. Um, but that's why I'm not running Pathfinder because even as a game master, I read through the rules and I go, "This is a really cool game." But we're almost getting back to like more old school D&D where you've got a lot of numbers you're going to be playing with. And unless you have a group that really wants to do that, yeah, feeling dumb or mostly anyway. Yeah, well, that's a whole other discussion. That could go into some of our discussions we're going to have in person about people at some point and hang-ups in games and issues in games. But what I like about Fifth Ed is exactly that. Like I've said repeatedly, I took a group of players, two-thirds of whom had never played a role-playing game before or played once, sat them down, and within an hour, we had made a character, or maybe we made the characters before. We made the characters before, but within an hour, within a half hour, 20 minutes, we sat down and were playing D&D. And they had a blast. And I had a blast. Because I didn't have to think about a lot. I am down with that. I really am. And for as much as I make jokes and I'm like, oh, here's a like earlier this week I was taunting my group and sending them like first edition modules like Expedition to the Barrier Peaks and being like, we should get back to real D&D, and sending them these 40-year-old modules that I'm sure if I were to read them now, I'd be just like, oh my god, this is awful. Wait, I actually ran this and played this stuff. So yeah, no, I don't want spreadsheets and tables. Like we do Warhammer fantasy role play. And I love Warhammer World. I've already said that. It's just ridiculous. It's overblown. It's satirical. It's, irreverent. But if I had to do this all on paper, I'm not sure I would. The fact that I have the digital interface to assist me, I would probably do that. Now, as far as forcing a subscription to D&D Beyond and Roll20, I do know players, perhaps even one in my own household, who might say, nah, not paying to play an online game. Sorry. Now, we also have an in-person group. For those people who don't have an in-person group, or for myself who wants to run a variety of games online with a variety of people and possibly segue it into doing it professionally, then I get it. I'm willing to cough up the $100 a year or whatever it is they're asking. That's fine. But for my partner, who money's not a significant issue, at least let's say $5 a month to play D&D would not be a significant issue. Just on general principle, she might say, yeah, no, don't think so. I mean, that's everybody's personal choice. That's everybody's personal choice. And right, what about the people who are just going to play it on Roll20? And again, are you going to really restrict access? or play it on Discord. Are you going to restrict access? Now, I like Roll20 for maps and dice, honestly. Even when I run a game, even when I run something that's more Theater of the Mind's Eye, even when I ran Vampire Online, which is 90% Theater of the Mind's Eye, I still liked having die rolling in maps. Oh, those old modules were awful. Tomb of Horrors was the best. Yeah, I have that one too. That's gonna be next week, or later this week. We're gonna play this next, right? We'll play First Dead rules. Yeah. Oh, you walk in the room. Oops. Yep, you're vaporized. Sorry. And again, like at the time, that was all great. You also had 10 characters in your stable who were basically named with different first letters, who were all basically the same character. Well, right, and it's not even a, yeah. I mean, it's pretty much a murder dungeon. It is the Tomb of Horrors. The Lich, the Arch Lich, Vecna is the least of the things you worry about in that dungeon. It's just like, like everything else kills you well before, yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's pretty much memorized. And by the way, Nikki, old school, we didn't have maps put out in front of us. We had to draw the maps according to Dungeon Master instructions. The corridor goes 30 feet up and then turns west at a bend, and then it splits left and right, 10 feet in one direction, 20 feet in another direction, and opens to a 40 by 40 room. And yes, cruel dungeon masters would actually make you map all that. And if you screwed it up, they were like, well, your character didn't know how to draw a map. So if you've got lost in the dungeon, it was literally your own fault. Now, I confess there's some joy to that as both a player and a game master. I don't know of any group I've played with recently who would really be willing to do that. No, Blake, I'm sorry you could not interpret my beautiful map, and my skills were so great that they surpassed your observation. This has been a joke for 30 years. Yeah, well, 4 players. What do you know? When you were 12, yeah. Well, that's about when I was doing it too. When I was 12 to 15, maybe. Yeah, there's a door behind a painting that nobody would find. Yeah, well, I mean, it was even... Yeah, really, yeah. The door behind a curtain you could never find because you didn't know it was there because it wasn't on the map. Right, that was exactly how it was. It wasn't even a secret door. Like, you just literally, draw a curtain there, and when somebody says, look behind the curtain, you never find the door. That's yeah. Not even a secret door. So, again, right, that age has passed, right? All of us. Even though, like, I like to wax on about the great old days of gaming, there's a lot of it I don't mind leaving behind, like THAC0. And again, anyone who's played with me knows I'm not a math guy. So, the whole idea of THAC0 was just, awful. I always had to look at the chart. No matter how many times somebody explained it, I had to look at the chart. So, again, it has changed. The hobby has changed. These digital environments do facilitate the way we play. Yeah, I think there's a couple takes on why Tomb of Horrors is the worst. Honestly, though, there were quite a few. White Plume Mountain was pretty horrible, too. Yeah. There are so many reasons why it was the worst. But, I mean, again, some of it was bad because it didn't even make sense. It was just there to kill a character. It's like the Shadows of Yog-Sothoth Call of Cthulhu campaign, where in the Worm That Walks, the scenario called The Worm That Walks, it says in the introduction, keepers should be prepared for players to lose at least 2 to 3 characters in this encounter. Well, the cool things about Barrier Peaks was it was all inherent to a narrative. It was not just like this psychopath created this dungeon just to see how many characters or players he could kill in the course of 4 hours of play. But yeah, at least Barrier Peak was interesting. It was an interesting scenario in White Plume Mountain. Barrier Peaks was fun though, because you got like laser guns and stuff. I showed that one off to the group too. I think I might even put that on Instagram. I'm not positive, but that was definitely that series. That was the 3 of them. Well, it is different. It is different. And I think I might have talked about this earlier this week. I keep maps and minis around for all the games, just because I feel it shortcuts having to explain a situation, even a simple situation. I'm not about running mass combats at this point. I think with my last group, one combat I ran had several NPC casters, several monsters who were pretty basic, and then a couple sophisticated monsters. And I was like, I don't ever need to do this again. You know, because it was just so much note keeping and record keeping. And then so what I did in the kind of big climactic battle of the campaign for that group was I had just preset basically an AI that would run the monsters. Like on this turn, this creature will do this, 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 and this under these conditions. If I have to, roll this die to see what it does. And that was fine for me. Yeah. No, so I'm all about it. You know, even when I did the play test of Tales at the convention, especially because I had a bunch of people I didn't know. And it was interesting because I definitely had one or two more rules people. I had one or two people who were definitely visual learners, you know, but as soon as I put the map down for the final kind of sort of encounter, you know, final battle, not even really final battle, but the kind of lead up, the let's play with combat in this scenario, just so you understand it. I did a very quick map and I put dice down for the monsters, and some of them had miniatures that they just had in their pocket. So this is my character, but I'm definitely way over. And you could run a stream. You could run a stream over Discord to show a map. Exactly. And that's why, and like I said, Roll20 I will probably remain engaged in, and D&D Beyond. If I got really into running D&D, particularly professionally, I would invest in the higher end of D&D Beyond. Right now, I absolutely don't want to or need to pay for D&D Beyond because I'm strictly a player. I'm playing in one game now, which is Blake's, and that is great. It's cool to have the facility to make a bunch of different characters and try them out. Frankly, his is the first D&D game aside from what I've run, that anybody who's tried running it in recent memory with our other group has stuck with. So, you know, again, I'm also way beyond spending hours making a character, which is the other great thing about D&D Beyond. You don't need to do that anymore. Like I said, I'm not saying these things don't have value, but what CC said earlier is very, very correct. I hope if you're going to create a recurring spending environment, it is stuff that is worthwhile. It is stuff that even I will look at and be like, no, that's actually pretty cool. I'll pay $4 for that or whatever. If I'm really invested in it in terms of my character, you know, I'm hoping that's the direction they go. So kind of my wrap up with this for the week, and I'm not necessarily wrapping up the stream, but my wrap up of this for the week is what I said to our group after talking about this for several days in various forms is, I hope at least if the CEOs have something goofy in mind, like, yeah, well, we'll let them buy the core quick start rules for $10. Then every time they want additional rules or additional character templates or whatever, they have to pay $2. Instead of doing something ridiculous like that, you know, or if they really think they're gonna do something ridiculous like that, I hope somebody in the company who is one of the actual designers and a gamer talks them down and says, we understand what you're saying, but this is the wrong way to go about this. You know, these people will not do that. At least a good majority of them. Some will. Again, people who are kind of used to this fragmentary monetize. Yeah. So, I mean, they're corporate CEOs by the time. Oh, right. Well, and that's why I said the whole joke is they're looking for a money grab while this is hot. And that's the reality. And they're looking to line their own pockets with the profits. They don't care about the hobby long term. Maybe they immediately care about it because it's their job to care about this company. And that's the reality. And I'm really hoping that the devs, the long-term investors, the people who are gamers, who are long-term RPGers, are going to look at this and say, like, this isn't going to work the way you think it does. You know, video gamers and RPG gamers, though there's a lot of overlap. I know almost everybody here who's on tonight is also an avid computer gamer. It works differently. RPGs do work differently. They are a different thing. I mean, even when I was deep into MMOs, and I wasn't nearly as deep as Blake's been, or I think Wolfie was at one time too. I had a hard time paying. I think I paid like $2 for a cosmetic pet that I really liked in WoW at one point. I mean, I think that was it. It was like that's what I would spend the money on, would be the stupid cosmetic pet. Like I don't need magic armor. Like, come on, really? Like, and I think that's what maybe Cece's saying. Like, if they start providing some kind of asset, especially if they create a really unified, like they've tried to do Adventures League in various incarnations over the years. I know there's a new incarnation, and they've tried to do these kind of unified living worlds, living D&D worlds over the years. If they can successfully launch something like that, where okay, you go to every convention and you're playing, Rogar the Barbarian or whatever at every convention, and through that you can buy things for your character that are really represented in some form at all of these different events, almost like you're an MMO character, a living MMO character, then I'm like, all right. I mean, I probably still won't get into it, but at least I'd say that, okay, that's kind of cool. I can see the appeal. But whenever I see the language, like what these CEOs are using, just, from being in creative fields who have seen this kind of corporate creep, I just sit there and I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it. First of all, you are making money hand over fist right now, like more than anyone ever imagined you'd ever make off a role-playing game, ever. I understand. To the board games Hasbro markets, I mean, maybe now D&D's competitive. Like I said, especially being an old timer. Let's see. Yeah, yeah, no, exactly, and it's definitely crossover. People definitely bounce between the hobbies, the facets of the hobby, but it is different in the way you think of a video game versus an RPG. Now, I think what they're also not counting in there is that when you look at a lot of video game sales, a lot of that comes from competitive gaming markets as well. Either, esports or pro RPGers. Nobody's making money playing D&D. Maybe people are making money writing for D&D or running D&D, but nobody is sitting around making money playing D&D. I mean, maybe they have it in their mind they're going to make a D&D esport, a D&D challenge sport sort of environment. We don't know. A lot of this I get the same vibe as I do as when a politician, almost any politician, floats something really ridiculous out. That's true, but they are an extreme minority. They're an extreme minority. Like the average D&D player anywhere doesn't make any money. I mean, again, Critical Role I think is the real exception, and I think, and again, yeah, well, yeah, and going back to that, they're also all professional actors. This is their job, right? Like they're acting in D&D. Like if they weren't acting in D&D, they might be acting in a movie and making money or whatever. But it's like, well, it's a game of the they have to provide something extra. And again, in a game and this is what Bill, who pops on periodically, who's one of my coworkers, one of our gaming friends, has, and a longtime gamer, has also said, like, it's really hard to monetize imagination. I mean, it can be done, but it's pretty hard to monetize imagination. It's a weird territory. Again, really, who am I to start throwing stones? Because I'm sitting here on a stream on Twitch who effectively pays me to sit here and talk about gaming and write game stuff. Not that I'm making any money at it at this point. I think if I broke 2 cents next year, I'd be thrilled. Not like some of the professional video gamers, who make huge, like even my one friend and former student, where she's a professional streamer. I mean, it's a part-time job. I mean, she treats it like a part-time job, but if she really wanted to, she could definitely make a small but decent full-time living. Crosby's been on once or twice. He usually lurks. Usually he lurks while he's doing other stuff. He doesn't talk too much. I think one night he talked a little bit though. Unlike those environments, unlike those people, I'm not making sense. But the fact that I can even sit here and do this and have an audience is only due to the popularity. The fact that I can even entertain the idea of running a game business, starting a game publication business, even if I don't publish D&D stuff, which, again, you could ask me right now, do you really want to write D&D stuff? Nah, I don't really want to write D&D stuff. And if somebody said, well, you can make a couple grand in sales over a year if you write a D&D module of this quality. Okay, I might think of it. And it's great that we can all do this now. And it's great that individual people can start to see some kind of profit. But again, there's this fine line that as soon as it starts to become a money grab, the whole thing's just going to crumble. The whole thing is going to go back to those of us living in basements and sharing stuff on BBSs. Okay, maybe not like that. But let's see, maps. Yeah, 10 Candles is kind of interesting. I've seen it played. I've never played it, but yeah. Well, right. And there are people who are selling books and maps. And somebody said to me last week, because I made a joke, I was like, oh, let's see, midnight? By 12:30, I can get these 12 NPC personalities done. And then somebody messaged me, and they're like, you know what? You should make, just rogues galleries. Non-system specific. Pick an era, 1920s, ancient world, medieval. And just create well-researched, really well-thought-out characters, because people are buying those. They're buying those just to have these stables of NPCs. And I'm talking putting out probably a 10-page book for $3. I'm not talking about making a hardcover that I'm going to charge $80 for. So again, there are opportunities there. It is cool because you can monetize like that. And again, I really don't have an issue if they charge someone who is making money something to make money off their product. That to me is not absolutely untoward. Oh, what I was saying before, all right, let's say I publish this game in the next year. Let's say it's even of cult level of success. Like people even if I have 200 people in the country who love this game. If somebody right. Yeah. So let's just say that somebody wants to take my game and write a story for it, a scenario for it. One, I'd be thrilled. But if they started making real money off of it, I might be like, if you're using my system, not just the concepts, if you're using my system, I might be like, no, I think I should get, something. Even if it's just, you make sure everything is stamped, rubber stamped, that the originator and designer endorses it and, whatever, buy the book from him, that's fine. So I do get that. So GW, yeah, well, and GW is a case where their unbridled greed almost did kill the company. And they should really look at that. They should really look at that. Because there was a case where they just had this endless player spending cycle. And again, that's why I got out of Warhammer 40K. Because I just couldn't. I remember I'd purchased, at that point it was one of the Rhino tanks. Beautiful paint job, got it all set up. The next month they were going to put out a new model, and my model could not be used in any official games. And guaranteed, we weren't playing a lot of official games. I think I played one, and the experience was so awful that I never went back. But the point was that I just spent the money on this model. And yeah, I can play with my friends. That's great. But, it was, in that kind of environment is destructive. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, your army book's out, but we're gonna have a new edition of the game now. Yeah, and they got so bad with this. They've moderated. They figured it out. They've rekindled the hobby. They've rebranded it. They've even got the skirmish rules in for 40K, where you don't have to spend 14 hours of your life running a game, So again, they came back, and it's just funny because my first response when my friend Tim, who Skullstein, who occasionally comes on here, sent me the article on the monetization was, they can't just leave it alone. Like, it's that capitalist compulsion, that corporate compulsion. Like, you can't just leave it where it's at and continue to make good money and say, okay, let's create lasting things of value instead of find ways to make people pay more. And I think an analog. Again, I started to say before, it was brought to my attention that absolutely Wizards, Hasbro are not unique in this. White Wolf, at least the last incarnation of the official White Wolf, was literally a scam job. I mean, they would put up these Kickstarters, and they were supposedly doing the Kickstarters to help pay for the production and the artists. Then nobody got paid, and the books never came out. Like, just, it was that kind of like taking that immediate advantage of the situation. And my joke is, well, people involved with White Wolf at the corporate level, honestly, were always kind of horrible people. I met a lot of them and dealt with a lot of them when I was running the LARPs, and they were always very quick to take advantage of other people's work, And that's always kind of my joke. Like, well, it's White Wolf, of course. The faces might change, but the personalities, and that's not true. Because I know that's not true for all of them. Because I did meet several very cool White Wolf people, like Ben Greenberg, Jennifer Hartshorn, who wrote Dark Ages. I mean, I met some of these people at convention. They were all really cool. But well, it is absolutely counter, and I've never been able to figure that out. Like, you know what? If you treat consumers well and give them something of value, even if they don't have to buy that product, they will remember you. They will remember you, and they will come back. And I've just never been able to figure out that quick grab. But that is the structure. That is the system. And like I said, that was my first thought when I saw that article. I was like, you bastards. I was like, you can't just be thrilled you're making millions off of D&D, like whoever thought, like whoever in a lifetime would ever have thought anybody could ever say, oh yeah, my company, like this. So the one thing I do like about, that they'll limit unauthorized NFTs and other businesses to exploit intellectual property, but beware, all those people on Etsy making those cute D&D things, good luck. You're now in the targets. This happened when Lord of the Rings came out. There had been people on independent marketplaces making Lord of the Rings fan stuff for decades, because nobody gave a shit about Lord of the Rings except D&D players, right? As soon as the movie, not even when the movie came out, because Fellowship didn't become widely popular for a while. As soon as Two Towers came out, Tolkien Enterprises just put the beat down on people selling, like, take me to the Shire stickers on I forget what it was, Redbubble or whatever site at the time. This was a while ago. Whatever site was making those cute little stickers. And I was like, you're really going after them? Like, you're really going after that person who just made 60 cents off that sticker. But again, in the capitalist mind, every bit of money that goes somewhere else should be in my pocket. And that's what, that's what just is always so cringy about this. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Game mechanics in only specific terms. Right. Exactly. Hobbits, Illithids. It's funny because so I picked up the Pathfinder cardboard stand-up bestiary, cardboard bestiary. And I'm like, there's no Mind Flayer in here. Like, there's every other stupid monster in some that I've never even heard of. And then somebody said it. I don't know if it was Blake or Andy, maybe in our gaming group, said something like, well, that's probably because Mind Flayer's probably, because they used it in Stranger Things, and now it's probably a copyrighted or trademarked term. I was like, oh, wow. So I bet there's not going to be a Demogorgon in here either. I was like, I didn't even think of that. So, like, of all things, your main bestiary box doesn't have a Mind Flayer in it. One of the core D&D monsters forever. So it's strange territory we're in. A strange world. So yeah, on one hand, they released this and said, no, OGL's not going away. You can still produce stuff. We're going to come looking if you start making a certain amount of money. The unlicensed third-party stuff exploiting intellectual property, that can get very dicey. I mean, all right, NFTs I'm fully on board with. Like somebody selling a Red Dragon NFT. I mean, my feeling is if someone's really going to buy it, like, you know, whatever. There's a lot of stuff out there that's, again, a little scammy that has come into the territory. So what about people? There were some cool things I saw at PAX. Like people had made like custom electronic die rollers. I guess if they don't stamp Dungeons and Dragons on them, but you can roll 8, 10, 12, 4-sided, 6-sided, 20-sided. I guess they can't really put the beat down on that. Maybe they can. Maybe they'll say D20s. D20s are now intellectual property. I mean, after all, White Wolf tried to trademark the word Gothic punk in the very first edition of the game. And everybody was like, well, you know, okay, we all know you're taking a lot of drugs, but what kind of drugs are you taking? Because that term has been around since basically the 70s. Like, you know, you're going to, or maybe the 80s, the mid 80s at least. Like, yeah, sure. You're going to get people to, every time they use the word Gothic punk in any kind of printed material to pay you something, right? I mean, that was laughable. That's on par with the type of thing that you could almost see them doing in terms of, you said D20, you know, you said roll 20. Wait. No, you can't use roll 20 in your game without paying us something. And again, that's an exaggerated, ridiculous example. But it, I mean, would it really shock anybody if a case like that came up? No. So, well, right. And again, NFT, just like crypto and all, let's see. Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if it was specifically Stranger Things, but it was very apparent that the Mind Flayer, yeah, I got some chat lag again. It was very apparent that the Mind Flayers simply were not in this set and we're not going to be in this set. And they're not in any of the cardboard bestiary sets from Pathfinder, at least as far as I know. So NFT is scam, right. I mean, generally they're a scam. No, right. There is some discussion. Well, okay, you bought a $10 sword for your MMO character. That's effectively an NFT, right? Same principle. It has an application in a game. I mean, when Chaosium was going to let that one company do a Cthulhu NFT, the player base went nuts. Like so nuts that the head of Chaosium basically came out and was like, all right, you win. We're not doing it. Now, again, they vote for all their problems. They've always been a company that has been very engaged with the fan base. They know where the bread's buttered. Yeah, it's true. That points to a digital item that you don't even own. Right. Again, I don't get it. I had one student who's just obsessed with NFTs, and he would spend money on them. And I'm like, I don't get it. Like, I really don't get it. Like, whatever. You want to spend your $20 on that pixelated hamburger? You know what? I'm not going to grind you down over it. I don't get it, but I don't get it. Whereas, right, at least I could say, all right, you bought that $10 longbow that lets you kill your enemies like relentlessly in a PvP game. I'm like, all right, I don't need to do it, but I guess I could see the appeal. No, they don't even own the hamburger. Exactly. That's right. That's where the disconnect is, that they don't even own the hamburger. I almost just went political there and I stopped myself. I think we're verging into national commie territory enough tonight, raving about capitalism, which I don't have a problem with, by the way. Yeah, I bet you were gonna say the same thing, Blake. Probably we were gonna say a very similar thing, but we were just like, yeah, no, let's just let this lie. Even though I think everyone here is pretty much on the same page. Again, that's not really the point of tonight. But yeah, again, I don't get it. And you know what? So the funny thing is, Chaosium had actually licensed an NFT earlier that year, and it just wasn't an announcement and nobody cared. And I don't know if anyone even bought it, but I think it first of all, it speaks to probably the person who it was pitched to not even knowing really what it was about. It's like, oh, you want to make something online that people can buy that represents our game? Cool. And he probably honestly had no even clue the ramifications of NFTs and the turmoil surrounding it. And then as soon as it was made clear by the fan base, that nope, sorry, this doesn't fly. That at least they stepped back and said, okay, we're not going to do that. And I personally don't care one way or the other if a company has an NFT or whatever. I'm not going to buy it. Do I think it's silly? Do I think it's a little shady? Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, that was exactly it. That was exactly it. And again, that was not even a thing that I think that was even on their radar. I mean, I've met some of those guys personally more than once in the last 20 years. They are not tech masters. Some of them are considerably older than me. So again, they probably literally just didn't even get what the big turmoil was. And that was kind of their response at the end, like, we're going to honor the fan base because you're all really pissed about this and you've been supporting us for 30 years. But whatever, All right, folks, this was a good chat. I think I'm going to be wrapping it up, though. I think what was said needed to be said. I think the viewpoints are all the people of, we're all kind of on the same page on this in varying shades. And, like I said, I think this is open territory. It's unusual territory. It's new for the RPG industry. Like I said, the language to me is just very dog whistle in terms of about to do something really stupid to screw this all up. And like I said, that was my first thought when I read the article. I'm like, leave it alone. It's great. Leave it alone. And again, hopefully they will have someone talk them down if they try to do anything really ridiculous. Have someone who's actually a gamer and actually, is involved in making these things say, dude, don't do that. Don't do that. People are not going to like that. Remember 4th Ed? Let's not repeat that. Remember Games Workshop? Let's not repeat that. All right, so won't be having a chat next week, probably in 2 weeks. I'm going to take next week off from streaming. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? They'll see it for themselves. They'll see it for themselves if they go through with something really ridiculous and people just stop using their services and go back to playing 3.5 or keep their 5th edition books and play it on Discord. That's what the end result is going to be. They won't see it unless they see it. Because again, the job of the CEO is to make as much money as quickly as possible. It's not necessarily to listen to good advice and follow. Or stupid in which good for other games, right? Which will come out in other ways. So I, very sarcastically said this is kind of like talking to a board of shareholders at a college. Not that I've ever had to do that. Where you realize they just have no clue what you do. They have zero clue what a classroom teacher does. Fate, yeah. I know you're a big Fate fan. I'm not totally sold on it yet. Just, I don't know if it's not my style of gaming. Powered by the Apocalypse, I want to look into more because I do know a number of people who are running. It's Deadlands. Or no, that's Savage Worlds. I'm sorry, Deadlands is Savage Worlds. Powered by the Apocalypse, I did look a little bit at too, and I was kind of like, yeah, I really want to look at Savage Worlds more. So I know that's how the new Deadlands stuff is powered, and I know a lot of other games. Like I said, even people I know who are not hardcore gamers have run some cool games on it. Yeah, and that's the way I'm gonna view this. I think it's gonna be an interesting thing, and I hope other companies take note. D&D 4 Val, yeah. We'll run back to 4th Ed and say how great it was. Like I said, there were some cool things that came out of it. It just overall was just like I'm playing a board game, basically. Like it made a good board game. Like I said, I played the Ravenloft board games based on it, and those were actually really. I'm like, this works great as a board game. I didn't like it as an RPG. Deadlands is cool. Deadlands is really cool. Blake and I played Deadlands really early on. I don't know if he was in the game with me with the developers at the convention. Yes, I know. Yes, I know you've only played 5e and a few other games. Yeah, Deadlands is really cool. I really enjoy that. The system for me was always really clumsy. I mean, killing 3 zombies takes an hour, but I'm wondering if with the new Savage Worlds rules, if it would be more streamlined. Because the people I know playing Savage Worlds are not numbersy. They're much more into the role playing. So I should take a look at it. I'm sure I've got a PDF of it somewhere. Again, being one of those guys who manages to collect these things, have these things appear magically, as if by a third level spell in my inbox. So, all right, everybody have great holidays of your choosing. Yeah, I'll have to take a look at it because I think it'd be up my alley, honestly. Gonna run for tonight. Thank you all very much. It was a good chat, and it'll remain to be seen as to how this unfolds. How this thing appears. Yeah, have a good one. Like I said, I probably won't do much streaming next week. Maybe I'll pop on during a day or two if I'm writing, but I won't have a formal chat. Great talking to you. Have a good one. Have a fun longest night over in Europe. I don't know if you're at any wild solstice parties. So the wildest solstice parties I've ever been to have been upstate New York. So, from the Tomes, Twitch TV from the Tomes, Fox and Board Games on YouTube, at Fox and Board Games, also on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. foxandboardgames.com. Keep your eyes open. Hopefully some updates are coming up soon, some cool updates. I have quite a bit of new content written for games. I hope to be sharing them there. Everybody have great, safe holidays. Have a good night. And as always, thanks a lot for your support, for tuning in. I'll see y'all later.